Hello, guys. Thank you for coming to the first Dakar Bitcoin Days in Dakar, Senegal. This is the first Bitcoin only conference. We are organizing to educate our people about Bitcoin, what it is, what it is not, how you can use it, and how it can help you in your life. Today, we are receiving Obi. Obi is the founder of Fedi. Fedi is one of our sponsors. You saw them all you saw them everywhere in all our communication. So we are really pleased to have Obi with us. So we'll go right away.
Thank you.
Talk with Obi. So heavy journey.
Hello. Hey. Thank you very much, Nourou, for this. And I'm really happy to be here. So my Bitcoin journey started in 2011. I was running a previous company. As background, I'm a geek, so I've always been into computers, AI, but separately, I was always into finding ways to make the world more meritocratic, more fair. And some friends pointed me towards Bitcoin back in 2011. I looked at it and I realized you had the world's first meritocratic money. And that's when I started my journey. I then went on 2 years later to co-found the UK's longest, which went on to be the UK's longest running Bitcoin exchange called CoinFloor. It launched in 2013 and I sold it at the end of last year. And now I devote myself to all Bitcoin, all empowering the global south, including Africa, of course, all with global impact all the time. And now I do that through three main things. One is board membership of B Trust, which was a fund, not for profit, set up by a generous donation from Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z to find talented developers across Africa initially, and eventually the whole of Latin America, whole of Southern South, the global South. Also, board membership of Gridless, which is a East Africa-based Bitcoin mining company. And finally, I spend most of my time as the CEO and co-founder of Fedi, which is looking to bring global Bitcoin adoption to the world.
Thank you, Obi. You said Bitcoin it was your first meritocratic money you ever saw. So can you go further on that and tell us what is Bitcoin for you?
So as I said, Bitcoin is the world's first meritocratic money. And what I mean by that is it's a money that doesn't care where you are from. If you have normal fiat currency, based, for example, the US dollar, then if you are a US citizen based in the US, you have an advantage over someone who is wanting to use the US dollar but not based in the US. And even in the US, if you're someone who is closer to the money printing machine, i.e., more privileged, more wealthy, more connected to the halls of power, again, you have an advantage. You have the ability to potentially, even if you overspend your money, you can effectively print more money, or you're friends of the people who can print money. So it gives an advantage to people, not based on how hard they work, but based on who they know. So, or how much money they have. So I would consider fiat currencies proof of wealth, whereas Bitcoin is proof of worth, how hard you work. And now, and when we see this new crop of alternative cryptocurrencies, altcoins, they effectively even state, actually, they state publicly that they are effectively the same thing. Proof of stake, i.e., how much money you have, how much money you're willing to put up, is effectively the equivalent of proof of wealth. And we've seen through hundreds of years where that leads us. It leads to a collection of power amongst a few people. And so that power then can be abused over time. And so, although it's not all the problems in the world relating to money, a very large percentage are related to the challenges with monetary systems, how they work. So the statement "fix the money and fix the world" has much truth to it. And the first thing you have to do is make the money meritocratic. It shouldn't matter where you are from. It shouldn't matter the color of your skin. It shouldn't matter your gender. It should just matter the quality of your argumentation and how hard you're willing to work. And that's what Bitcoin gives to us, which is why I dedicate myself now and forever to see this adopted around the world.
This is a really interesting perspective. So, how do you see this proof of worth money and meritocratic money help the African? I mean, the question is, what is your view of Bitcoin in Africa?
Yeah, so it's quite simple. As I said before, the further you're away from the money printing machine, and the most important money printing machine in the current society is the US dollar money printing machine, the worse off you are. The more you're going to have to work to compensate for the lack of access to a machine that can print money out of thin air. And if you look globally, the people who are furthest away economically and geographically are people in the global south, Latin America, Southeast Asia, Middle East, and especially Africa. So even if we work 10 times harder, that's only just, it may be not even that will compensate for the fact that we're so far away from the money printing machine. So you can imagine if we move to a world where the money's meritocratic, where if you work the same amount in one country or another, you get the same reward. It doesn't matter where you are. We have nothing but, and we have nothing to lose and everything to gain from that. When you look in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, as some of the most popular search terms for people in the lowest socio-economic demographics. It is how to find work, how to get a job, how to make money, i.e., people want to work. They want to work hard. They just need the opportunities. They need a meritocratic system, and they will then you should just step back and see how the global south, and especially Africa, will flourish. So we have, as I said before, nothing to lose and everything to gain to moving to a Bitcoin standard for the world. And I actually think there's nothing short of seeing the biggest transfer of wealth from the global haves, often in the West, to the global have-nots, the rest the world has ever seen once we move over to a Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, in fact, if we're moving to a Bitcoin standard in Africa, we would be the wealthiest people in the earth because we are the ones that work the hardest. And yeah, I see the how. And then we'll go deep into another question. We heard a lot about Fedi, and maybe Fedi or something to do with Fedi. So what is
Yes.
Fedi?
So yeah, so once I saw this, I sold my company at the end of last year, and I decided to dedicate myself to all Bitcoin, all empowering the global south, all global impact all the time. But I could see there was a big challenge. Having run an exchange for 8 years, and having tried very, very hard to get people to self-custody, I could see with the best will in the world, we're going to get 1%, 2%, maybe 5% of people self-custodying. I would literally beg people to self-custody out of our customers, which was very unusual for exchange operators. And even then, they would say, unfortunately, I understand Bitcoin. I understand why we should self-custody, but I trust you more than I trust myself to custody Bitcoin. And I realized that we needed an alternative to self-custody, which could get people off exchanges, because I could see an increasing trend where people would hold on exchanges, and regulation would one day make it impossible for people to self-custody. The music will stop, and if they haven't removed their money from exchanges, they may never be able to. Also, if we look at a world where everybody or a large percentage of the world is using Bitcoin, we need to have a strong foundation of privacy from the beginning. You cannot have a world with 8 billion users or with accounts on 3 or 4 exchanges, each with a couple of billion users each on them. And the exchange operators have full visibility on their balances, where they're moving money, where they're spending, what they're spending on. That will be a nightmare world. It'll be like a horror movie. And we cannot have that. So Fedi comes onto the scene. It's been worked on for over 2.5 years by some of the greatest engineers I've ever met. I got involved now nearly a year and a half ago, and worked very hard with the others to raise awareness for this protocol. It is the missing piece of the Bitcoin open source ecosystem. Bitcoin itself provides you the hard money, the meritocratic money, the store of value. Lightning runs on top of Bitcoin and allows you to move Bitcoins around at lightning speed at very low cost with enhanced privacy. And partnering that is Fedi Mint protocol. The Fedi Mint allows you to hold Bitcoin with a strong foundation of privacy and a strong security, as well as extensibility. So you can add features and functionalities that fit the purposes of your community as you go along. And the way it solves this is by using the power of Bitcoin and combining it with the power of community, which we in Africa and at the wider global south understand all too well. So communities come together to locate the most high integrity, trustworthy members of the community to custody Bitcoin using the Fedi Mint protocol on behalf of the community. So, i.e., the community using the Fedi Mint technology can empower itself and empower all of the members of its community without having to rely on a third party like an FTX, for example, which we can now see, as was predicted and why we set up Fedi Mint, often ends badly. Now, the last part of it is Fedi. So Fedi Mint is the protocol. Fedi is, think of it like a Bitcoin wallet or a Lightning wallet, but it's Fedi Mint capable. So you can download the Fedi app, which is coming out in the beginning of next year. And just like a Lightning wallet, you can connect to a Fedi Mint. The experience will be like using the easiest, simplest Lightning wallet you've ever seen. But while you use it, without you having to do anything, you get cryptographically near perfect privacy. You get a really simple onboarding experience, which is similar to the experience that you would have from using an exchange, but without the exchange and with an incredible level of privacy and direct integration with the Lightning network.
The problem you are doing with the exchange is really, I mean, this is something like people are running from banks to go to other banks to that table, And you talk a lot about privacy and community. Why is privacy and community so important for Bitcoin and for you?
Yeah. So as humans, we need to verify, but we also need to trust. If you don't trust anybody or anyone in any way, it's very hard to do anything. If you're sitting in a chair, you have to trust the person who makes the chair to make sure that it's not going to fall and hurt you. If you ride in a car, you have to trust the person who makes the car. If you eat food, you have to trust the Food Standards Agency to make sure that the food has not got poison in it, and so on. So we cannot go through life not trusting anybody. It's important to build any complex society, and complex society is what we need to innovate and advance. However, we also need to verify, and that's something that's been missing for much of modern society. And that culture of verification is what Bitcoin gives to you. So Bitcoin gives you this culture of verification and a tool where you minimize your trust when it comes to your base layer money. But when you combine the two together, strong communities with strong money, that's when you get the best result. And in the global south, and especially in Africa, we have strong communities. We've had to have that because we haven't necessarily had the financial institutions which we can rely upon and trust. So it's forced us to have strong community. Now, when you power that strong community with the right tool, Fedi Mint, and obviously Lightning and Bitcoin, that's when magic happens.
Uh, Coming back to Fedi, there is a system here in Senegal called Tontine, where you have a group of women. Most of the time, they will choose one woman to keep their money for them, and every month they
Mm.
will give money. And every 1 month, you have one of them that will take all the money. But that person that keep the money, most of the time you have some centralization issues. So what I'm seeing with Fedi is like having the tool team, but with more privacy on Bitcoin. And also, I mean, empowering the community to also have the traceability, the transparency.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
yeah.
agree with that.
So yes, so we've looked around the world, and if you look across the global south, you see similar organizations all across Africa. They're called SACCOs in Kenya, for example. There are similar structures in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, places where you do not have high trust in third party financial services, or you don't have access to them. The communities come together and come up with solutions themselves. So the idea of communities coming together to deal with provide themselves financial services is actually very, very common in the global south, which is why something like Fedimint is so appropriate. But what Fedimint does is it takes that existing process but uses technology to supercharge that. So to reduce the trust in one person, instead of trusting one, you find the most trustworthy 4, 7, 10 people within the community. And as long as the majority of them stay honest, then you will continue to be able to trust the process. So instead of just trusting one, you now federate your trust across 7 to 10, improving the trust mechanisms. In fact, actually, compared to other blockchains, many have only a few nodes running the entire system. You can see that with the number of main staking pools for Ethereum, it's only 3 or 4. So if we have 10 trusted people that you know and through your entire life have acted in the interest of the community, then, and knowing that as long as the majority of them stay honest, the system will continue to run. And as long as a minority of them stay honest, the system will not do. It will not be possible for the rest, even the majority, to be able to do something against against the community. That feels to me like a much more trustworthy situation. On top of that, because it has a foundation of privacy built in to the system, it uses the protocol called Xiaomi and eCash, which was actually a protocol made in 1983. So it's nearly 40 years old. So it's a very mature piece of technology. Um, by default, without anyone in the community having to do anything, you get cryptographically near perfect privacy. And privacy is important in our financial affairs in general. But in a community context, it's even more important. It's even more important that if you're buying something and that you want to keep that private from your neighbors, because sometimes you may have to buy something that's very sensitive for whatever reason, for some personal reason. You might have money problems, you might have whatever it may be, and you don't want anyone in the world to know, but even more so, you don't want your neighbors to be aware, and you want to be able to maintain financial privacy. So again, within a community context, privacy is even more important than anywhere else. So again, we have built that in, and to the normal user, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to take any action. It just happens by default.
Yeah, really, really interesting on my side because the parallel you made with the federation and the fact that instead of trusting one people, you can trust more than one. It's like
Yeah,
Bitcoin nodes, where like at least, I mean, as long as you have one honest node, you're sure you'll have the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin history from the beginning, and then you will
yeah,
resist from cyber attack. I mean, this is
yeah.
really interesting. Uh,
Yeah.
what are your
Now, to
expectations?
be
Yeah,
just to be clear, that Bitcoin is the most decentralized computing platform that we've made. Maybe the only thing that comes close is BitTorrent. But when it comes to financial services and money, it's only Bitcoin. So a Fedimint isn't as decentralized as Bitcoin. We say it's federated as opposed to decentralized, but it is the most decentralized and federated form of custody that we believe the world has seen. And it runs on top and works closely with the Bitcoin network to supercharge the ownership of Bitcoin, access to the Lightning Network, and empower communities to do what they already do, but better with more privacy and more federation, more decentralization.
Yeah, in fact, this is a real decentralized finance, the DeFi everyone talking about.
We call it federated finance, Fedify.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. And this is the last question. What
Thank
are
you.
your expectations for the continent related to Bitcoin, related to Fedi, related to yourself? What are your expectations for the African continent?
So I have very high expectations over the coming years, but I think it will start. It's already started, but it will be 2023. In 2023, it will become clear that Bitcoin has won. And what I mean by won is that we will see an example of something that we haven't yet seen in the Bitcoin space, but everybody has been looking for. And that is an example of a community that has become, and that could be a village, a town, a city, that becomes hyper Bitcoinized, i.e., they have adopted Bitcoin. They are working on a Bitcoin standard. And what I mean by that is that over the majority of people in that town, in that city, in that village, large village, are using Bitcoin every single day. It is their daily form of mechanism for custody and for payments. That will be possible now because of Lightning and because of Fediment and obviously because of Bitcoin. And when the history books look back or at to work out where um, Bitcoin won, it will be clear that the 2023 was the when, and the global South, Latin America, Middle East, post-Soviet regions like Belarus, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, etc., and of course Africa will be the where it happened. So that's what I expect to see for the outlook. We will be the vanguard. We will be the leaders in this change, in this revolution of money.
Yeah, and we believe that. That's why Dakar Bitcoin Days, that's why Fedi, and that's why a lot of other initiative around Bitcoin and what it can be and what he can do to Africans. So thanks a lot, Obi, for this really
Thank you very
interesting
much.
interview. And we hope we'll see the Fedi project be something African will use.
You will see
And,
it, and
yeah,
you will see it, and Fedi will help power Africa, and Africa and Africans will help power the world and Bitcoin.
oh man, this last word with the interview. Thanks a lot, Obi.
Thank
And bye
you.
bye.
Bye.